Hello, I'm here with Becca B. of Soul Based Life, and I'm Leslie Shankman of the Stellar Nations. And Becca and I are both teachers and students of a galactic perspective. And it's really important, I think, when at this time we realize that I think we do realize it, but let me put it in words that we're really expanding from an identity as being planetary citizens to an identity of being galactic citizens. But what does that mean? So when we look at things, we have to understand our cosmic history. And Becca and I both have different perspectives and knowledge of cosmic history. So in today's conversation, we do want to look at the coming winter solstice, which is that point of equal dark and light. And we want to look at the messages from the stellar rays, from the stars. Because in the stellar nations, which is what I study and know, that's a cosmology out of Hungary. And it was first apprehended in 2005, 2006, when the stellar delegates came to two women in Hungary, 13 stellar delegates, and said, it's time for the Earth to move to a stellar consciousness as part of what's happening. So they apprehended their consciousness was expanded to the seventh dimensional star Antares, and that is the home of galactic Akashic records that are held in sound frequencies. So getting this information was pretty interesting for them. They had a lot of history in stellar work for many reasons, but attenuating to the seventh dimension and sound, where the cosmic history of our galaxy is is harder. So they were actually implanted with stellar seeds near the pineal gland that help them apprehend these, let's call them frequencies, and they're really energy patterns, apprehend them as pictures. And that turned into the galactic myths of the Milky Way Galaxy. And that's what the Stellar Nations is about. It's 13 stellar soul families. And in this cosmology, as we're told that we are cosmic humans. And as cosmic humans, we were asked to be the chalices for 13 stellar soul families. And so what the Stellar Nations is a mapping of the development of these soul families through different stars. And stars are actually considered to be sentient portals, worlds, and we actually have our aspects of our soul living on the different stars. So you can really think of it as the stars are the cells of our light body. And with that, what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at the astrological radix for the point of the winter solstice, but we're not looking at astrology really. What we're looking at is what are the stellar rays coming through the planetary bodies. The planetary bodies are lenses as we know them in astrology, but the stellar rays all have stories and messages. And we know now that we're just getting totally I'll say flooded with with light because we're in the photon belt fully. And we're getting flooded with the light of these stars, and there's information in them. So what's amazing about the stellar nations is we can learn from these stories how to interpret this information in a way that is coherent and really helps us understand our galactic selves and helps us understand ourselves as cosmic citizens. And we then also we can be very grounded and very coherent, but yet in by boundlessness. I mean, here's the perfect we talk about moving into a both and perspective rather than an either or, which is what we have more in the third density. And being grounded in boundlessness is good. So we'll get into that. That's enough of an introduction there. And I'd love, Becca, please let us know. You have such a vast background in other ways that you've learned cosmic history. And if you could just fill us in a little bit on that.
Well, Leslie, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for letting me share this space and this time with you. Every time I connect with you, it just feels like an honor, like I've reconnected with a soul sister that we get to dance together in another incarnational experience. And just explore just the what I want to use is the word that you just brought up, and that's boundlessness. I just think that's so perfect for this expression that we keep stepping into as to remembering our galactic quanta that is within us, that we are so much more than this incarnation that we are, but yet when we start to recognize that, it actually helps us venerate and make this incarnation so
Mm.
much more special. We stop trying to get out of here into being something else and we start to get to realize we are all of it and so special right here, right now. And I think this is so important for us. So, yes, I do have a lot of different perspectives that I have been led to study and work with and expand with. And in this particular lifetime, I feel it's accumulation for both of us of many lifetimes. And so I don't think it's an accident that we've both been drawn to the stellar nation. So again, I want to say thank you so much for being a guide and teacher for me to understand this material so much more. You have brought so much more depth to what the guardians, I think, bring forward for us within this. And within this, I think it is such a perfect way for us to see the multidimensional nature that we are, because I think so many people in searching for who am I, many times are looking for one star,
Hmm.
one pinpoint, like define me, who am I? And that is that is almost like the opposite of what we truly realize ourselves to be when we go to what I like to refer to from a lot of the materials that I share is the core star that we are. And that the core star that we are is an emanation, a light that we are from even beyond this system. And so as that light shines, it does shine into all these different stars, as you're saying, and then we leave these little packets of ourselves within these stars, and then they play and they dance and they express themselves throughout us. So I think this is a perfect time through this alignment to the galactic center for us to really look at the winter solstice, what I think of many times as a rebirth time, kind of like going into the darkness and into that beautiful space within that many of us don't want to spend a lot of time going into, but when we do, we go, wow, here's all the magic right here. And I think this is such a great time too, because honestly, I could say 2024, but I think there's been quite a few years of just a lot going on for all of us, here on planet Earth. And I think we've really gotten to a very special time here at the end of 2024, this winter solstice, to really start to embrace the beauty and all of the different challenges. And so within that, I was really honored to get to explore some of the stellar rays, because I think as you, I think, will so beautifully lead us into the Lilith and the Chiron.
Mm. That's a big one in this one. Right, right. So, yes, at the point of the winter solstice, I'll bring it up in a minute, but I have the chart for that and the stars. And that's, we could think of them almost as these seed stories that are being imprinted right at this moment for us to germinate, right, through the dark of the winter. So what are these messages that can lead us to our boundlessness, right? And you said too, it's about remembering. This is not something new, but this is just a way to remember who we actually are. It is a time of rebirth, not just at the solstice, but really for us as humanity as a planet. Hopefully, I mean, it's meant to be, it can be. We still have some responsibility to make it that way. That's why we're talking about these things. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the code just a minute. Okay, so the way that the Antares code or all these stellar rays are shared is through an astrological radix. And this is the radix for the point of the solstice. We're not really going to get astrological here. This is done from where I live in Washington. So the positions, the house positions don't matter. What we're really focusing on here is the stellar rays and their messages. So this is what an Antares code looks like. It's got many radexes because there's 13 stellar nations to highlight. And with that, the different radexes will hold 3 or 4 soul families at a time. So what I'd like to do with this, and I actually purposely didn't make slides for this because maybe you're on a walk listening to this, maybe you're just laying down listening to it. But all this is about apprehending and remembering from inside. So whatever we say, I really invite this to just be kind of storylines that you hear and notice if they attract you in any way or cause any interest or curiosity or reaction. Because these are the idea is that we know that we're in ongoing consciousness. You know, right now we're here as a physical distillate of a much bigger consciousness. And what the Stellar Nations Antares Code is telling us, it's showing us the design of our individual lives, what our souls put together to become physical distillates, to understand a little bit more what our patterns are, our karmic patterns, and what we want to work out. And that's all inherent in the stories, because these stories are really stories of each part. These are all parts of ourself. And each part of ourself is, let's say, given an assignment or a mission. And we're meant to be experiencers of creation because the divine mind is inert and can't experience creation in and of itself. It's this beautiful mind having ideas. It made us as cosmic humans to be experiencers, gave us these 13 stellar nations as soul aspects, and said, use these to go out and explore and experience creation and go to the deepest dark to find your light. So what's inherent in there? Inherent is that we were made as this huge light. We were made in the face of the Creator. And the face of the Creator for the cosmic humans made us with a masculine and feminine complementarity. And that's part of our job, we were told, is to balance these aspects of ourself, masculine and feminine, and also the 13 stellar nations within ourselves. But the point of me telling you all this is to understand these are all parts of ourselves. When I tell you this story, we all sort of have an assignment. We're a messenger in one part, a teacher, a healer. And each one of these stories pretty much is about how, in having our free will and being asked to use ourselves as experiencers, we've lapsed, say, we went into a deep identity and left a feeling of being part of the whole. So what these stories have wake up in us is that sense of, oh my goodness, once upon a time I was whole or something more, and yet somehow I left that. And why? So the design of our Antares code is really helping us understand the why, but we're not looking at an individual code today. We're looking at the code for the winter solstice. So this is actually the stellar messages coming in at that moment for us as a collective. All right. So, and ultimately, what I also want to say about what I just described is ultimately everything about these stories is the path of redemption. What they're one of the rivers going through this creation cycle as a promise from the divine is that grace or redemption runs through everything, and it's possible for us to turn the worst of situations over if we surrender and accept grace or mercy. So this is all inherent in the stories. Let's start with, I want to go first to the moon. And I also want to say, remember when we saw that radix, we have to imagine ourselves, because this is the way we're living now. We're right in the middle of that. and it's a big sphere, it's a hologram. And all these different energy patterns are coming in at once. We're starting to realize people are talking about simultaneity. You know, on the third dimension, we know we live in past, present, future. We organize that way. But when we move into our consciousness being in our broader soul aspects on the galactic level, we're not talking about time. We're talking about energy patterns that we access with our consciousness, and that happens simultaneously. But now we're asked to integrate this, right? In the third dimension in our lives as we expand. So what I want to say, as I'm just about to finally launch into this, imagine yourself getting all these influences, because that's how it is. And that's why I like being able to organize ourselves with understanding the stellar nations. But now we're looking at collective, and I want to invite you to imagine that Becca and I, in our conversation here, are going to be standing kind of in an orchestra pit. And when we look at each one of these planetary bodies and the stars that come through it, it's like notes of music. So what we're doing, you're hearing a whole symphony. But what Becca and I want to do is just point a baton at the moon. And you know how a conductor does that, and maybe the instruments get a little louder over there. It emphasizes. So in essence, that's what we're doing. That's what we want to do. And feel that in yourself. So starting with the moon, we've got three stellar soul families coming through it and three stars. And let's just recall that the moon as a planetary body is really our representative of our inner selves, our emotional nature, and really our subconscious more. Things that aren't quite conscious, but aren't necessarily unconscious. They're sort of there in a shadowy way, right? So we've got the great feline soul family coming through, and this is the part of us that uh, stands up for sovereignty and free will in a very feminine way. It's a very yin part of us. It's connected to the goddess. And the story of Sheraton is this whole thing with the moon here in our subconscious at the winter solstice is a this is an inception point, really. That's why as conductors, we're putting the baton here first, because Sheraton represents when the great feline part of ourselves as upholders of free will and sovereignty really decided that, you know what, there should be no rulers, which is a wonderful Aquarian utopian idea. But at the time, the rest of creation and even themselves were not mature enough to really carry that idea out. But they rebelled and they had a love affair with the Dragon Nation, which is another, it's great felines are considered yin warriors standing up for free will, dragons, yang warriors standing up for divine will. The dragons took advantage of them. They betrayed them. Sheraton is the place of pillow talk, where the great felines thought that they were moving into this kind of standing up for a more utopian, egalitarian world, and the dragons were just taking advantage of them. It ended up with the pillow talk giving up secrets, there being a big attack, many great felines being killed, many of them being pushed out to the Andromeda Galaxy. This is the first time that dark defeated the light. And this is also when our galaxy tilted yang, because the feminine influence was pushed out. So with the angels, the guardians of creation, this star Al-Sahal was not revealed until 2020, which is interesting, right? Because we know we've been through this big evolutionary push. And three new stars were revealed in 2020. But what Al-Sahal is, it's a cosmic remembering chamber. And it's got the effect of sort of like Russian nesting dolls, feeling concentrated down, 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 till finally your consciousness comes to a point where it just pops. It pops into the realization that, oh my God, once upon a time, I was whole. I was something different. I was more than this. And then the winged lion is the aspect of ourselves that is learning how to be a vessel for the divine. So it's right use of power, uh, being a leader in a way that you can entrain up to divine frequencies. There's a long initiation pathway for the winged lion because, of course, we have to learn how to master our ego. Zosma is one of the initiation stations, and it is a place where um, you feel like things are going well. You're mastering things. Suddenly you get sidelined and pushed off. Why? Because it's necessary for us to understand how to use our ego. It's necessary to develop humility. It's necessary for us to develop compassion, not only for ourselves, but when you realize that you can be pushed off so easily, when you do eventually get through your initiations and are more of a leader in the true sense with a divine running through, you're not going to be as prey to the shadow of superiority and getting upset with people who can't listen. You'll remember, wait, I got pushed off, they got pushed off. So in the moon as an inception point, we've got these energies and these stories coming through. And I'll just summarize it by saying, there's this sort of memory of guilt and this feeling to come back. But Becca, let me just open this to you a little bit for any reflection, and then I'll try to move my baton a little faster and go through these.
No, this is perfect. And I think the moon is actually a really beautiful energy to start with. And I wanted to highlight something that you said in the very beginning, that the stellar nations really kind of is a download of a transmission that came through these sounds. And that even when that transmission came through, it was almost kind of like an activation within the pineal gland in order for those geometries, that light language, that whole library to come through. And what I think is amazing about the moon, because it is holding these really quite profound stories that we've taken on from the great felines, from the angels, that the constriction into expanding again, and even the Zeusma energy of now starting to kind of come back out of that. And let me tie this into two more things that I think is so profound, because as we're seeing this, this really is a journey of redemption.
Right.
And the moon is holding that vibration that is a luminary of our deep subconscious. Many times the things we're not even paying attention to. So maybe the wounds are the things we're not even aware of, but we have reactions to, can be coming from these things from so long ago that we just haven't processed and seen the bigger remembrance. And so I wanted to take this term of redemption, which I think is so beautiful, and the idea that there's grace and surrender to this mercy that allows this energy to come. And I think a lot of the idea of redemption is going from forgetfulness to remembrance.
Mm-hmm.
And the moon at this particular time is actually in the gate 64. So within Gene Keys or human design, this is completely even tying in. The gate 64 is the final one. There's only 64. So it's kind of like the
Mm-hmm.
completion sequence in there. And where is it? Right there. It's at the head. It's at the very top. It's the place where we get the downloads from the creator in order to begin to have our libraries of wisdoms again. But we have to open up to knowing how to interpret the symphonies. If our pineal gland is clogged up from the third dimensional reality, or these shadows of our subconscious that the moon might be shining on us, we're going to be confused. The gate 64 is the gate of confusion. That's the shadow of it.
Mm.
But it's I love the names in Gene Keys because it goes by the term of aurora. So thinking of the aurora, the illumination of the light and the city, that the evolution that the moon really is shining at this winter solstice is this energy of literally, it is the word illumination.
That's
This
beautiful.
light within there. So I wanted to just kind of add that because I think it ties in so beautifully to what you're saying is that sure, the deep subconscious can hold a lot for us. And when we go through the times of the galactic center alignment leads us into the winter solstice, we might start to have a lot of this, stirring up of the stuff that's been in the deep subconscious, and the moon's reminding us, hey, the gate 64 is always taking us back to that place. I think, and it's the moon's not always going to be in this position for a winter solstice. It's not a given that this is where it'll be. So
Right.
I think that's very unique that we're getting to experience this vibration right now.
Yes, thank you so much. That's a perfect illumination on that. And that carries us right into the next two planetary bodies I wanted to look at that just grabbed my attention, and yours too. And that is Lilith and Chiron. And part of the reason they grabbed my attention is they're opposite each other here, which is
Yeah,
interesting, right? And
yeah.
they're both deep personifications of the wound. And telling you about Lilith now from the Stellar Nations perspective, uh, they only put this on the code last year because finally the Celestials, they always do everything with uh, as they're kind of guided divinely. And they hadn't put it on earlier because Lilith will have so many different faces, different, three Liliths in astrology, but also it's seen often as very the demonic, dark, dark woman. And they were shown that it's time to put Lilith on now because what Lilith is in the context of the stellar nations is actually the underworld of the underworld. Under the subconscious, it's is the unconscious. It's the deepest wounding of the feminine. And it's very specifically holding the galactic history of this great feline wounding that we just started to articulate, but also later on, I say later on, but really these are, as I said, they're just energy patterns, corresponding relational energy patterns. There's also a stellar soul line called the female serpents, who are healers and know the tantric mysteries, how to bring spirit through the body and unite with the God force. And the female serpents, um, with this yearning for the goddess, because she had been expelled from her galaxy, started taking up, well, cosmic humans started taking up learning on about the great felines on Electra. And she was basically, it's a long story, but totally despoiled. So what Lilith is just this incredible, incredible, incredible hurt of the great feline and the female serpent. But it's also more than that. It's the yearning for the goddess, the yearning for understanding the wholeness, and the inner knowing that we weren't created, the feminine wasn't created to be less than. So, and also this year in the Stellar Nations is the return of the great feline energy that's been healed in a bigger way. So this is all bigger parts of the story we won't go into. But Lilith, they were also shown Lilith has a toolkit in our code, and depending on the house and the sign it's in, um, it kind of represents where our ongoing consciousness is with this Lilith wound. And actually, Libra is probably one of the easier places to have Lilith because what it represents is we're already searching for balance and redemption. Some of the other, like if you're Scorpio Lilith, you might be pretty deep still in revenge in your toolkit. Um, so there's that whole nature of the wound that's has a little bit more of a deeper meaning in the stellar nations here for the feminine because it's tied into those soul lines. We have the stars here. We have the male serpent line actually coming through. Interesting, because that's part of the wounding towards the feminine. But this Mufred, I'm not sure how to say it, has to do with the teacher or the messenger who really has a hard time meeting their fate because they're so full of fear and doubt about delivering their message. And that's because at some point that message has been misused. I mean, maybe they taught someone the physics of how to make an atom, and someone went off and made an atomic bomb with it. It could be something like that. They innocently taught and the information was misused, or it could be a purposeful misuse because of a power over. So there's that energy. And then interestingly, on the Bootes constellation, Sagittarius is the uh, star in one of the shoulders of the Boot constellation, which looks like a man, and it's thought to be Melchizedek. What it means is having the feeling of shouldering the inner feeling that you have something to teach, you have a responsibility. So look at the conflict right here. I'm so afraid to teach because of my galactic past. You've got to teach, you've got to teach. And then in the Bird Nation, which is their messengers, they contain the fairies and elves. There's many things about the Bird Nation, but they're co-creators with us as humans and a gift to humans. This star is in the Corvus constellation, or the Ravus, which contains 5 stars that are kind of representative of an imprisonment for not using power correctly. And this cross star is not using power in a very ruthless way, in a dominating way, trying to basically destroy or squash or push someone out so that you can be sure that your power is maintained as a power over. So we've got here just the whole idea of what Lilith means, and then we've got these kind of sticky tones coming through. Do you want to reflect on that in any way?
Yeah, and I think Lilith is amazing because, you know, it is something that can start to bring up a little bit of a darker idea or a darker thought. And I think that's a lot of what we're addressing right now. Kind of like you said, what was the whole kind of mission of the experience of the cosmic humans is go in and find those darkest places to bring that light to it. Lilith actually, on a galactic history level, really reminds me of the story of these divine cosmic birther mothers. That there are race lines, and you can think of it through the race lines of Electra. These divine priestesses, if you will, that had the mastery over parthenogenesis. They had the ability for the triple birther, basically being able to give birth to creation because they held all of the cosmic kind of seeds or codes within them. And there is a storyline within the galactic history that they were seen as a threat by a lot of the male lineage lines because they were like, oh, well, if they can just kind of give birth to a whole other race line, and they're going to make us obsolete and they will run everything. And so there was actually a time in Earth's history where a whole grouping of them, a whole kind of group of them was actually evicted out of their own star system and sent to exile to planet Earth. And planet Earth at that time wasn't seen as the place that you would live. It was more kind of like a living library and a place where creation was happening and that the many of these cosmic stellar nations were working. And so when they got evicted there, it was kind of getting evicted in some ways. I know this is a very crude way of saying it, but being evicted to go live in the very zoo that they're that they're working with. And so there was a sense of being cut off from home, like they were made like as though their magical powers were so scary that they had to be kind of kicked out of the society. And so within that galactic history, they're very much associated with the energy of Lilith. That Lilith in some ways was not understood, so kind of kicked out. And part of that is then starting to get to embrace this very energy of, well, what is that aspect of creation again that we can awaken within ourselves. I love Lilith because Lilith kind of shows us our repressed, our repressed voice, our
Mm.
repressed energy, the places, and in our childhood, so again, it's kind of seeing this in a reflection to the moon. This is many times the places in our childhood where we were told, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a kid. Oh, your opinion doesn't matter. Oh, that's not the way we think. Or, oh, don't be doing that. Don't talk like that. Don't think like that, these kinds of things. They can either get programmed from the family that we're raised in, the religions, the society, the culture, it doesn't matter. So it's the places where we're kind of taught to shove down our
Mhm.
own voice, where we want to speak out, where we want to have input, where we want to have something that actually contributes to creation. And when it does finally unleash, yeah, it can sometimes unleash through a rage or through a reaction or speaking in a way that you can't take those words back. And there's, I think, a reason why Lilith, in some ways, it's the moon and a cross symbol, but if you kind of look at it, it kind of looks like a scythe.
Yeah, right.
It's like, whoop. Well, we think of that. Our words, they say that. Words are very powerful weapons. They're the knife that you can't undo the cut. You can't undo something that's been said. So, in this, I think it's really amazing. And maybe I'll dive into this when we start to look at Chiron with this. But Lilith, and the energy of Lilith and where it's placed is in the gate 57. The gate 57 is the polarity to the gate 51, and the gate 57 is the gate of intuition.
Mm.
It's amazing. It's in our splenic center, but of all the gates, of all 64 human designer gene key gates within there, it is the one that is literally about sensing and knowing things from feeling every essence within creation. And the gate 57, in a lot of ways, it says it's kind of like the intuition to know things that there's no way to describe how you know it, because you're actually picking up on the frequencies that change in a person as they're talking, the temperature of their energy field as they're talking, their pheromones. It's like you can
Mhm.
smell the pheromones changing as someone is talking. So are they speaking truth, or are they lying, because the energy and the emanations from their field are starting to change? Well, this is amazing, because in this polarity with Chiron that we're having right now at this winter solstice, it's saying, hey, the polarity says that you have to balance the places that get shocked awake within you. And that when you go through initiations, initiations are like a birthing process. And so
Mhm.
they generally aren't something that happens all tender and sweet. They generally kind of feel sometimes like the rug's being pulled out from under your feet. I don't know how many of you guys remember initiations back, say, in Egyptian times.
Mhm.
Or even in some just like the ancient priestess initiations, it's like, okay, we're taking everything from you. We're dropping you off in this cave in the pure darkness, and you got to find your way out. And so I think in some ways, Lilith is really guiding us through this, that the wisdom is within us, the knowledge is within us. And even if we have been made to be afraid of it, and I think the male serpents kind of brings that in there, and as well as this Corvus energy. I actually have a huge resonance with a lot of the energy that Corvus brings through, because it shows us many times that it's like power is power. And sometimes there's not even an awareness that you've just misused power. And then it's like, oh my gosh, what did I do? There's like you said, the atomic bomb. That's how I feel that guy felt that brought that wisdom forward. It was like, what did I do? Like,
Right.
it's like I'm like, now just created death. So I think that's amazing to get to embrace this, as where we got to have the courage to speak and start to embrace that power again, start to come out from the caves, come out from the underworld, come out from where we've been suppressing these energies. And I think that's Chiron at this time, I think, is coaxing us into doing that.
Yeah, everything you said is so beautiful in terms of the messages coming up through the other planetary bodies. So that's great. So you're saying Lilith is right on. Gene Key 57 is coming through her positioning
Mhm.
now. Okay. Well, that's actually perfect. That's makes, well, just like Chiron, the deepest wound can be turned into the essence of healing. Um, Everything you just said about Lilith is really very applicable to everything else after we talk about Chiron. Um, just quickly on Chiron, we understand Chiron as the wounded healer on many levels in that myth. little bit more of an extension in the galactic history through the stellar nations. Chiron, the centaur, is actually right next to the Crew constellation. And the Crew constellation, those four stars are the holding the principles, the divine principles of creation, divine love, divine law, divine mercy, this redemption we're talking about, and divine will. And in the center is the temple of Christ, or Christ consciousness. So in the stellar nations, the story goes that the nearby claws of the scorpion at one point, one was the Zubaneshanellis, one was a recruiting station for the male serpents, the other for the female serpents. And there was a real low octave energy happening at that point, because just in the stuff of this competition with the masculine and feminine, and the male serpents duped the low octave female serpents into duping Chiron. They basically said, look at all our students are being taken by those bears. The bears have such a simple message about the heart. What's that about? And the female serpents fell into sort of revenge for it, and they said, yeah, let's get Chiron to attack this stronghold of the bears. Now, you would think, why would Chiron do that? But, we all know in our human experience, there are times when we somehow get overtaken by an idea. We get almost drugged by an idea. Uh, the crowd forces us. We don't think about it. We lose place with our center. In essence, I mean, the myth goes that they sort of drugged Chiron, but it's a little more than drugging. I mean, Chiron said, yeah. And in the story, the back leg of Chiron, which is Gamma Centauri, is right over Gacru, which is the star for mercy. And it came down, crushing mercy, crushing the idea of redemption and grace. So that when Chiron came to and was like, oh my God, what did I do? Now transpose this also to our own life experiences, um, and felt shame and guilt and couldn't I really understand, what did I do? Why did I do that? Um, the way out of that wound is to surrender and ask for mercy. And yet that's exactly what was, the site of, I mean, the whole constellation was breached, but at that site. So there's a little bit of I find it a little bit of an extra heaviness, or a way that I can personalize Chiron to myself. Um, we have one star here, and this is in the cosmic Arthropods, and the Arthropods are an incredibly beautiful nation, in the sense that they're tasked with having a web go through every sentient, or every creation, every piece of creation. And that web basically picks up what's going on in creation, creates records. It's another kind of Akashic record place. But it moves those records up to the creator. So the creator can know what creation is doing and respond. And sometimes when you see a negative, this particular star means there are transfer stations for that information. And when the information is being sent to the creator in its truth and wholeness, there's a positive there. In the negative, that means that this transfer station has been usurped by the fallen aspect of this nation. And this is really where we get that, what we experience all the time. The ideas and the things that come through the web of light about the experiences that we've had, our vulnerabilities, what we feel inside, are misused. They're turned back in the astral into mind manipulations, into miasms, so that it can keep us as humans smaller. And then what are these fallen ones? They're basically aspects of ourselves that haven't been willing to rebirth, that haven't taken renewal. Consequently, that part of ourself is more shriveled and needs to take energy from elsewhere. And that's what's happening when these mind manipulations, or keeping us small, allows us to be sort of mined for our energy, because we've forgotten to say no to it. So that's all I would say there. That is is coming through on Chiron, and it's very, very kind of topical now in a societal way too. I think this whole arthropodic influence, it does have a lot of overlay with the way artificial intelligence is used.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that has to do, artificial intelligence is going to have originated from somewhere. And so a lot of times it's coming from the inception points of maybe the belief systems or the thought forms from which it was incepted into creation. So I do think, in so many ways as we can see an arthropod connection to Chiron, it is connected to the gate 51, which is at opposition to the gate 57 of intuition. And the gate 51, if it is projected in anyone's chart, especially if it's in kind of one of the more influential planetaries, like a north node, or like some energy with sun or earth, or something that is really kind of creating a massive influence within someone's chart, it means you're here for the path of awakening, that you came here to literally shatter the illusions within this lifetime, which we could see as kind of this idea of the false web of the arthropods. It's kind of like they took the original creation of the cosmic mother and then made this false video game or hologram or their own
Exactly.
version of it that we're playing in. And what do we do? The gate 51 says shatter it, shock it. Like, it pulls the rug out from underneath us all the time so that we start to see the illusion of the reality around. And so we start to shake ourselves and say, wait a minute, what is it that truly matters? And I think in that, it is that awakening place that starts to see the eternal nature within ourselves. That intuition starts to awaken within. So I would say, even if people have arthropod connections within their chart that have that negative, like the plus or the minus, it doesn't really matter. They are still that integration of that polarity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, we all have that. And actually, we have to realize too, because we are this continuum, that everything we do, particularly here in these physical distillates where things are so dense, everything we do that is upgrading these energies is like going back. It's almost like a homeopathic remedy to evolve this aspect of ourselves. So it's not just that, I mean, we're kind of hoodwinked to think that there's these higher energies and they are good and we're down here uh, as less than or sinners. No, there's a continuum. And what we see in these stories is there's octaves of development right within given stars, within the lessons that our soul particles are learning. So we're there as a witness. We're probably not there, depending who we are. We're probably not there participating in that way. Some people, some beings are. But anybody who really cares to look into this stuff is probably there more as a witness. You have to have your soul awareness planted in these different places. I mean, you don't learn your light without exploring the dark. That was the whole point. And I think really that's part of one of the deeper messages, probably, of what, the whole Christ soul coming in the person of Jesus is to go completely into the dark, to pull out and find and redeem into the light. So, yeah. Okay, shall we move on?
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
I think that leads us right. And I'm not sure if Mercury's
Well, I'm wondering if we should just quickly do the sun, since the sun is so
okay.
essential. And
Yeah.
it's another part of the story in that the sun in the stellar nations was an eighth Pleiadian star, and it's an angel star, and it basically rebelled and left its orbit at a time analogous to being an adolescent. Again, it's kind of that energy of when Sheraton happened. Oh, we think we know what to do. Let's go. And our son didn't was looking at Atlas as his father and thinking, I don't want that fate. I don't want to just hold things. That's so boring. And yet the truth was Atlas is a vessel, for creation to flow through. And actually, our son is was given grace or mercy our sun is a reflect, we're the microcosm of this. We're on the pathway of redemption. Our sun's mercy was to create the Milky Way Galaxy as a way to arbitrate all these different forces, the planets, and understand what its true fate was and return to it. So in the stellar nations, the sun is actually arbitrating these different planets that it set up as pieces of its own psyche or memories of its Pleiadian family, which actually gives a little bit more of a breadth to some of these planetary bodies within the context. But at any rate, our sun, as the radiant luminous body, it's as the becoming, as the expression, um, we've got Nishuba there, Nishaba, which is, where the point where the arrow is shot from in the Sagittarius constellation. And it's all about the arrow of truth and justice, like really standing up and understanding what the truth is and what would real justice be in all these cosmic and human karmic dramas. And it's not necessarily for us to arbitrate justice. It's for us to understand in this bigger divine sweep that there is justice. But also it allows us, or it asks us, it's a very fiery energy, and it asks us to dream very daringly and very bravely. Like, don't hold back, see the bigger vision and go for it. And then the bear community, who are teachers of Christ consciousness or of the heart, this spiculum is actually what you said before about it's just that brilliance of the knowing coming from within inside. It's just the flash of insight. And it doesn't have to come through the outer knowledge. It comes up from within. And then, interestingly, on the Dragon Nation, which is very uh, kind of hierarchical because it's a young nation, young warriors, learning discipline to hold the power that the dragons hold to guard divine will. Very important to be disciplined. And the first five initiations, there's 8 initiations on the dragon pathways to different stars. The first 5 are in the elements. And this etamin is in the element of water. So metaphysically, that's about our emotions. So this is the initiation to knowing how to use our emotions, how to arbitrate, not be vengeful, not be small, to really understand when we have to hold ourselves in certain ways, and also understanding the scope of emotional intelligence, how when we see it in others, to start to assess and understand what's happening from the emotional intelligence of others. So this is a pretty direct, potent message from the sun, and that actually pretty much comes through every year, this message on the winter solstice.
We love that about the sun. It definitely it does give us kind of that consistent ray that we could think of like as a spiral that is moving because no matter what, if it's the same stellar nation that is activated each year, we're not the same. We're
No,
in a
right.
different point in creation. So there is a really neat invitation that every time this solar illumination comes around, it gives us another opportunity to have more depth, more of an awareness into these things, or maybe a more mature way to look at this energy. And even within the human design, the gene keys, this is within the gate 10, which is in
Oh,
that identity center within the middle, which is about the direction through the love of self, learning how to actually start to follow our own path without looking outside of ourselves for, did I do it right? Did I say it right? Am I doing it the way everybody else says? What is my life mission? What is my purpose? What is my path? And one of the interesting kind of metaphors or energies within that is actually the story of Siddhartha, so of Gautama Buddha, and that level of going through all of those emotions. So think of Etamine and these dragons and learning the emotions and all of this of why is there suffering? Why is there all of this? And really questioning this reality, questioning the matrix, if you will, until there was the transcendence, the awakening. And the
Hmm.
awakening comes within self, and it's not like he awakened and left. He awakened and he still was within this field, but within a completely different lens of perception. And that's really, I think, our invitation through the winter solstice is how do we awaken into this time of being? That we don't, again, we're not looking for a spaceship to get out of here because we think it's
Right,
so
right, right.
bad. We're actually learning to wake up from the illusion, becoming
Exactly.
Buddhas.
Yeah, beautifully said. And that you really illustrate something else about the Antares code. Everything you just said about that remembering is what Al-Sohal, the star we first saw on the moon about the cosmic remembering chamber, that we only had revealed to our collective consciousness in 2020. So meaning that we are starting to mature into the possibility of understanding it individually and collectively, but it perfectly aligns. And that's very often all these stellar rays will have they're just reference points to each other in slightly different perspectives, which is exactly what creation is about, right? Okay, so let's move to Mercury. And Mercury as a planetary body in the stellar nations is traveling close to the sun. It's thought that in your Antares code, Mercury is that's what it's whispering in the sun's ear. 'Cause it's close. It's kind of whispering news of home, the Pleiades, or of its original fate or being, and reminding. So whatever is on Mercury in a Antares code is something that should be uh, looked at as an amplified message for your incarnation. So let's say this would be an amplified message for us now at this point of the winter solstice. And we have Antares itself. This is the angels come through Antares. It's known as the eye of the angel. The angels are hearing the divine mind. They're seeing the divine mind, the light that comes out, and they're scribing it in the frequencies. And that's why we have everything that happens in the divine mind or in creation inscribed on Antares in these frequencies. Music. Cosmic humans going through Antares, it's just exactly what we've been saying. It's about we are galactic cosmic beings, and Antares is about remembering that. It's about becoming remembering souls and reminding souls. And then the female serpents coming through Antares, this is actually, it's a portal of rebirth. It's right in the middle of the Scorpio constellation. And it really kind of bespeaks the whole, well, the death process that we go through all the time in living, really. The death process we go through literally, the death process that we're asked to go through on the galactic levels with all these things that have happened, the death process that we have to manifest by surrendering and becoming something new and renewing. But Antares is the really it's the goddess herself pulling us back in as a point of rebirth and also saying, you're forgiven. I love you. You're taking us back. And it's just us accepting it. And then very quickly, interestingly, two more stars on the female serpent line. Very often in the stellar nations, what Bay and Aniko saw was a lot of things that we think of as constellations now in our nomenclature actually have other constellations under them from the cosmic remembrance. And under Ophiuchus is actually the goddess riding that Kundalini snake. That snake that he's holding is the Kundalini snake. She's holding the head up high towards the galactic center, Russell Hager, Hagee, and all those healing energies. And her yoni is on that. And Han, there's several stars that are parts of the female anatomy as the representation of this whole tantric pathway. And Han is the Volvo or the cave. It's the start. Come into this dark cave. And the whole impetus of this tantric energy is the desire to unite, the desire to remember. We have tantra sexually, but ultimately, really, it means the ability to know that you're one with everything. I mean, there's if you have the right consciousness, you can feel that you're one with the tree, so it's that deeper understanding. This Alnayat is one of the shadows, kind of when the feminine was so despoiled and there was no place for her in anything that's feminine. When she had children, especially a son, if the son would look at her as as the mother and vaunt her as the mother, and she was like, she got to remember a piece of her femininity. So this can be a little bit of an odd energy where the feminine can have a hard time letting go of that one aspect of the masculine that actually keeps her in something that's aligned with the goddess. And then the whales are the this aspect of us that's the angel who's accepted redemption, a fallen angel, and has been reborn in the light body of the whale, is very compassionate being on its way, metamorphosizing back to its complete wholeness. And this gamma trunga, the other thing is in the southern sky, what we see is like I think it's the GRUS constellation. It's a bird with some outstretched wings. They say, no, that's actually a whale. Okay. And uh, well, the southern sky is all over the south too. So it's over Lemuria. This is part of the conversation. Whales were just such a part of Lemuria, both in the physical ocean and in the etheric ocean, and it was all connected. But anyway, this is part of the head of the whale, and it's this realized being who has a lot of compassion now because it's been through it and accepted mercy, and it's on its way back. With the head, you realize it's in the southern hemisphere. It's passing the Centaur, the Centaurus constellation. It's passing Chiron, and it's kind of just looking at all that's happened in this galactic cycle and going, oh my goodness, it's sort of reprising it. So there's that sense of just taking it in, but with deep compassion and also deep love for the creator. Like, this is what this creation cycle is. This is how we are learning our light and by learning the dark, and actually have the potential to evolve past needing the polarity of light and dark in the same way, which is perhaps part of the end game here. So,
I love that. I love that so much. And, I think there's so much wisdom to the combination of this and kind of recognizing that Antares, as this transmission of these light codes and these symphonies, has connections to multiple of the different stellar nations as it expresses out. And I want to kind of touch in on this Mercury because, Mercury, as it's whispering, like you're saying, it's kind of whispering the messages. In the evolutionary astrology, it's known as the lower octave of Uranus.
yes.
And so, in some ways, when we start to maybe even embrace some of this energy, not only of Antares, but I would even say just kind of this vibration of the whales, just metaphorically realizing they live in the depths of our oceans
Mhm.
as their physical embodiment within our creation, which I truly believe within my heart, if the whales weren't here, Earth wouldn't be here.
No, no, they keep the morphogenic field. That's actually their mission, is
Hmm.
they're totally aligned with the divine mind, and they sing the frequencies that keep the morphogenic field in the the meaning what the divine mind wants for each planetary or stellar body. And without that grid work, forget it. You're exactly right. I mean, we're always fraying it, right? Because we're living here not necessarily in concert with the divine mind, and the whales are constantly sounding in the frequencies that repair it.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And, within this, Mercury, as it's reflecting these messages through this winter solstice, it's in the gate 5. And the gate 5 within the human design and gene keys is really, really quite profound because, on one level within the gene keys, it's referred to the ending of time. But really, what it is it's about timelessness. It's not about the end of the world. It's about recognizing the patterns of creation, the musical tempo, the beat, the symphony of creation, and that really on a shadow level, 5, especially within Mercury, is impatience. it's been that restless energy of like, well, what about this? What about that? And not being able to be within the flow of the symphony of creation, like the whales, and I think that would even reflect in their journey, is that they really do now hold that embodiment as the redemption, as you're saying, of the angels, of coming back into that position of holding that sound tone and that frequency of the morphogenetic field, and just observing all that kind of went haywire when we tried to tinker with all the sound tones
Mhm.
of creation. And so I think, Mercury's going to give us a really neat opportunity to actually kind of go into a state of patience, into a state of, in some ways, surrender. Where are we actually being so noisy with all the chatter that we're trying to superimpose from maybe ego, or our kind of the subconscious we're not even aware of, that the moon was bringing up for us to be aware of? And where can we actually start to just let that rhythm play out, and that we don't have to make things change right away? It's like a lot of times people hear somebody say something like something's going on, and they immediately want to jump to, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? What, this is how you fix it. This is how you make it. And sometimes the solution isn't to go change it. Sometimes the solution is to be patient and sit in it, to
Mhm.
see what messages we get from that experience of initiation, so that we can actually have that remembrance really flow through on a bigger way.
Yes, thank you. That's beautiful. Okay, let's just do a few more. I mean, we would be here for 20
I
years if we
know.
do them all, but hopefully I love the way you're elucidating with the gene keys and human design, because, these are all bodies of knowledge, I think, that are meant to help us at this time of remembering. Richard Rugg calls them termas. They've been planted here, right? That we would wake up with them. We would find these keys. So let's go to, because we're talking about the masculine and feminine needing to come into their complementarity, let's look at Venus and Mars. Um, and Venus is holding, speaking of the whales, the Alnair is what we think of as the wings on the goose, but it's really that outstretched arms or fins of the whale and also of the angel. It's just more kind of a statement of opening up, like opening up your heart, opening your chest, going towards that wholeness or home. Because in the stellar nations, this whale's headed back to Spica, one of the high angel stars, the highest angel star. So there's that statement about Venus. And then interestingly, the dolphins, she's carrying the dolphins. And the dolphins are a nation that never did have a lapse. They're healers, and they sing, the way they heal is each dolphin star sings a frequency of divine love. And divine love's not an emotion, it's a frequency that's literally like the connective tissue of the galaxy. It's the creator's being, love, heart, right? And there's different ways that's expressed. But the dolphins also very specifically help souls who have disincarnated from the body through the astral levels. And there is a constellation called Job's Coffin that looks kind of like a coffin. But the dolphin stars there are actually they're islands of light that as the departing soul is coming through the astral, they're kind of taking it through a process to help it get through the astral so it doesn't get caught there. And the Susalon as the first one, I don't know if they necessarily go in order, but it seems like they might, because that's a song of light. And what it's doing is just taking the soul in hand, singing, it builds like a cocoon of light around the consciousness. And it's singing, the song of light is easing the fear of death because the identity is starting to move into this broader sense of light. And then secondly, we've got the dolphins on the Delpha Delphini, or the song of letting go. And that's basically letting go. It's releasing the earthly memories, helping the soul change its identification. I mean, there's another star in the Epsilon Delphi, which says, you know what? The dolphins are saying, I'm going to keep these memories for you. You will have a chance to look at them because they're instructive. You've lived this life. You'll have time in a chambers of mirrors, but not now. Now it's really important to get over. And the last one, the Rotanev, is the song of love. And what the song of love does is just soften that soul into a sense of security, a sense of knowing that it's okay to go forward. It's okay to go forward towards that light. So this is part of the missions of the dolphins. And dolphins are incredible. Just a short aside, they like, for instance, when the tsunami happened back in the early 2000s, Bay and Aniko saw that 300 people died at once. Well, actual dolphins in the ocean, as well as probably etherically, get a call out. It's a telepathic call out. They're totally related to each other. Um, and they call it taking up the island formation. And they circled those souls and they literally build a portal that just lifts them so they don't have to go through that trauma. It's like a special grace that can happen. So I feel like Venus as this feminine aspect lens is saying, look, there's all kinds of help here. And let you speak on what you think about it.
Oh, I don't know if you should hand Venus over to me just because it's in a very personal alignment for me personally for this particular year. And I have a deep love for the dolphins, and you've actually awakened me to so much more of that within the stellar nations because I didn't know about their story as much. And especially the Delta Delphini is almost the exact degree onto my sun sign in
Wow,
this particular incarnation. And so I always giggle because I'm like, literally, since I was a child, that's always felt like my life purpose is to help people remember how to let go of the things that are in this reality so that we know how to die right.
that's beautiful. Well, and that's such a good point, too. We are distillates of these things. We come here to trigger those memories.
Mhm.
So that's beautiful. Sometimes they're wonderful memories, and sometimes they're a little tricky.
Absolutely. And I think it's amazing. You know, it's in the gate 13. The gate 13 is all about the art of listening from the heart. And it again is another energy where it just says again that there isn't a need to jump to solutions for anything. That when you learn to kind of just sit for that right moment, that it's you hear exactly where that core spark of what that other individual is really looking for. What is that core wound? What is that core place that they're really looking for some sort of direction and passageway? And I think as Venus emanates that into us at this time, I think it's really just inviting us to recognize the playfulness maybe of the dolphins, to realize, I mean, what are they doing? They're helping people through the journey of the soul, which most people are scared of. Yet
Right.
they have this kind of sense of the smile, their sound, even just their presence. And there's so many stories on this planet of people falling overboard and dolphins actually keeping them afloat until they're rescued, and even creating air bubbles for them if they need. And they are truly such an incredible guide for us at this time to help us remember just that compassion and love within our heart. I think is what this we one thing we can take from this ray.
Yeah, very much so. And Bay and Nautical also say in the dolphin chakra system is three in the body, and then there's I don't know how many more. I have a picture of it. It's like a huge tube torus that just goes throughout creation.
Mm.
Um, and so it's flowing through everything. This song of love is flowing through everything. And Venus, by the way, is our sun's memory of his sister Electra, who's incredibly beautiful, who was hurt and despoiled. But for Venus to offer us this, is just it's a deep healing of the feminine, really, to say, let's spread our wings here and let's help to remember. And so now let's go to Mars. And it's amazing that this winged lion star Precipice, winged lion, as I said, are learning to be a vessel to have the divine energy run through. And Precipice is a feminine expression of that. It's the beehive cluster, and it's the idea of the round table. It's the true idea of democracy, that all together we're united as one, but we don't lose our individuality. It's really a very Aquarian ideal. And the interesting part about it is that that's what when we go all the way back to the moon, when the great feline went to Sheraton and had the pillow talk and thought she was doing a great thing, in her heart, she wanted the expression of precipice. So I always wonder, well, did the Divine Mother have to go, oh my God, my child, you want that? Now I have to set up this creation cycle where I leave you and you learn, you know? But I think this is so poetic that it's coming in on Mars. This masculine fiery force is holding this feminine understanding of being a ruler, and also considering everything I just said, how it ties into the fabric of this of the stellar stories and the stellar relationships. That's all I would say about that, but it just strikes me.
And I think it's beautiful. I think it's maybe even a perfect place to kind of wrap this whole just energy within this, because I think the winged lions do really bring such a beautiful kind of reintegration within us. And I think it's really interesting too within the tropical. It's in Leo 444.
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
It's not quite exactly in opposition to the Venus, but obviously, it is about within 10 degrees of an opposition. 12 degrees actually. And as we look at this, Mars, as we get to embrace that winged lion, is going to now start to invite us, into how do we be this expression of our true empowerment. And I think
Hmm.
we started with some of the energies of maybe even some of the things like Corvus and things like this, of misuse of power. Well, Mars is the lower octave of Pluto.
Hmm.
And so as Mars is that lower octave, it starts to say, hey, okay, now that you are getting all of your your powers back from the underworld and uncovering these and having them, what is initiating your action? And it's in the gate 31 in this wing line energy, and it's a leadership energy. If I see this in someone's chart, they're here to make an influence or an impact in other people's lives. It's the gate of influence. It's a gate of sounding your truth. It's the gate of leadership in a way that is actually leading through inspiration for others, inspiring them to be better within themselves, inspiring them for why it matters to them, not because you're telling them, not because it's a have to, but because it awakens something within them that they want to maybe start to embrace this wing line energy. So I think this is really amazing because Mars says, be careful. The shadow of this is arrogance.
Hmm. Well, it's funny because Mars the sun psyche represents him, but kind of in that adolescent state that he left in. And he's going through a real maturation earlier in the year when we had different Kazimis. Uh, anyway, we won't go there, but yeah, and it's interesting that you talk about the higher octaves. We can't go into all those stars, but what you just said about Uranus being higher octave of Mercury and Mars um, having a higher octave in Pluto, those stars could just illuminate this message even more. And I think we should pull it to a finish, but I do want to say we have to talk about Saturn, okay? And then we'll end on Saturn because it's a beautiful message. And Saturn in our sun's mind represented his father Atlas, that the fate that he thought he didn't want, right? Um, but now he's starting to understand in arbitrating the Milky Way Galaxy. Oh my God, you don't just stand there. It's like, this is crazy. You have to let the flow of creation come through you. So what you've got is the male serpent who are teachers of knowledge and believe that, like they have the Kabbalah, the tree of life, all those orbs are the organization of the divine mind. And if you study them well enough, you can climb back to achieve the divine mind again. But there's so many initiations in the male serpent pathway. And the river Eridanus is a long pathway of different stellar worlds that are in aspects of what you have to learn. And Ashanar is right at the end of the river Eridanus. And it's kind of like a culminating type of initiation. And it maybe they talk about it as analogous to the sarcophagus initiation. It's where you basically are asked to pierce the darkness or the illusion, to come back into the knowing, I am an ongoing consciousness. I am my soul. I am I that I am. So that's what that is. But here's something fascinating. This Alpha Hydrae is in a constellation that was only discovered in the 1700s, the Hydrus, and it has Alpha and Beta Hydrae. And basically, their discovery is a reflection of the goddess coming back, and in the collective, it's starting to dawn. So Alpha Hydrae it emits knowledge about the goddess's consciousness, her dreams, her vision. It pulls the female identity towards the goddess, her voice and her message. But in the sky, Alpha Hydrae and Beta Hydrae are approaching Arshanar as the river comes down, and this, let's say, this matured, finally attained male serpent who doesn't have to compete anymore. It just knows it's okay. I can be one with. And the female serpent is coming up in the Alpha Hydrae, and so they're looking at each other. They're like approaching each other. And then right next to them, as they get near each other, is the Phoenix constellation, which Phoenix represents rebirth. Anka is the third eye of the Phoenix. Anka is telling us, yes, yes, there's a long dark tunnel, but the third eye is always seeing the light ahead. And sometimes it's really hard because you're not at the light ahead. But it's the energy of a survivor soul. It's the energy of get up, man. Come on, we have to do it. Um, so I think this is a finishing accord that brings together the idea and the hope that through Saturn especially, we have this potential of greater awareness of these two aspects coming together and the perseverance through the Phoenix.
And this is one of the things I love about the Guardians and just being in the free fall of these conversations with you, Leslie, because we couldn't make this up. Saturn is literally kind of bringing us to a completion to where we started, which was the moon. It's an opposition. So the moon, having been in that energy of 64, is now bringing us to its polarity,
Oh my
which
goodness.
is in the gate 63, right? It's like, I just love this stuff because it's
Oh
like,
my gosh.
when you free fall trust, the guardians say, like, ta-da! It's just here. And it's so amazing to just get to kind of see that vibration in there because what I love about Saturn is that Saturn is just always challenging us to a new way of thinking. And in the gate 63, this vibration is this energy of doubt, where we could overanalyze and overdoubt things and over contemplate things and not trust anything. Or do we start to just learn how to have a higher level of discernment within creation? That it's not about getting rid of all of the things that maybe the arthropods are doing, or, pointing fingers again. Well, if they weren't doing this and if they weren't doing this, then, or do we just start to embrace everything that we have ever been a part of in creation and have this new discernment that we can move through this creation and this reality and keep resetting this container of our consciousness into a whole new way of being? And I again think this is so perfect for the winter solstice, which is truly inviting us to go into that depth, to awaken the pineal gland, to have a new way of thinking, to really just go into these self-initiations within ourself that says in this next spiral, what do you choose to be reborn as?
Yes. And to recognize that those aspects that are dark are really just pieces of ourselves that we're afraid to take initiations. It's a mirror for ourselves, and we can't cut them out. We have to somehow be with them or transmute them or something. I mean, well, you said discernment. It's discernment. And what you said also is it's exactly the message of what a cosmic human is. The true ultimate mission of a cosmic human is take all these different diverse pieces, be them, and harmonize them. So And that creates a whole different potentiality for a different collective reality, which is where we're going. Hopefully, we want to go. So I just thank you so much, Becca, for helping to illuminate all this. And what I would take from this and hearing, in our conversation is just, as you just said, the trust, the beauty that it's all right there. The divine plan has such a sense of humor. It leaves us things all over the place. We just have to see them and we have to trust and we have to probably, learn to laugh a little bit and have some fun with it.
I totally agree. Leslie, thank you so much for inviting me in on this conversation. This has been absolutely incredible and amazing. And as always, I am just so grateful for your wisdom and all that I learn from you each time that we share a conversation.
Thank you, Becca. Same here. I can say that